Well, India has emerged as a force to reckon with in the realm of solar power. Today, we are the third largest solar power producers in the world. With 42 solar parks, India's solar energy production capacity stands at 84.27 gigawatts. Interestingly, we also host the world's largest solar farm in Bharat in Rajasthan. Apart from this, we have chalked out an ambitious plan to build 1 crore solar rooftops across the country in the next few years. The Union government is also eyeing to establish 50 new solar parks over the next 6 years. We have undoubtedly made leaps in our switch to green energy. What's perhaps most obvious is driven with little to no aid from the West. And this is despite the West constantly berating us on international platforms, blaming us for rising carbon emissions across the world. Despite this, India is leading the world in the endeavor to adopt renewable energy. We established the International Solar Alliance all the way back in 2015. Today, 100 countries are members of this particular bloc. Our push towards augmenting renewable energy and solar power in particular is a bid to attain energy independence. Well, we already produce surplus energy, yet we are dependent on crude oil imports to satisfy our energy needs. This is rather a paradoxical situation. And this also brings us to the question, is Bharat on the trajectory to become a solar hub by 2030? Is the solar boom or the power boom that we are seeing indicative of India's resolve to live up to being a Vishwaguru and setting an example for other countries? Will attaining energy independence help reduce the expenditure of foreign exchange reserves is also the big question that we talk about today. Joining us on the show at this point in time, we have special guests who are going to give their feedback and perspective on this important issue. Mr. Ramesh Kurupat, Chief of Programs, International Solar Alliance, is joining us on the show. Ankit Bhugra, Technical Director at Greenage India Resources Private Limited, also with us on the program. Abhishek Pillai, co-founder of Solar Ladder, is also joining us on the show. Mr. Abhishek Mazumdar, Head of the Embassy Services Private Limited, is also joining us on the program. Mr. Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, also with us on the program to talk more about this. Thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. Mr. Ramesh, I'll begin with you, sir. I hope you can hear me, and thank you for joining us and taking out the time. What do you make of this initiative that India is steadily, consistently, and very ambitiously going ahead with? When it comes to power, when it comes to energy, India has always been a very avid fan and an avid leader of solar energy. How does this, this example that India is setting take us miles apart and miles ahead of the competition that perhaps may be ahead of us in certain realms, but India is going to get there soon?
Thank you, thank you for giving me the floor, and it's a greeting from International Solar Alliance to all the participants and viewers of this show. So in India, if you look at India's growth story from 2010 onwards, for last 14 years, a very meager small megawatt in the capacity of maybe around 20 megawatt, we have crossed 84,000 megawatt. It's a quantum jump, and the story has been very, very exciting. Before I talk about International Solar Alliance, I was also the larger part of my journey with the Solar Energy Corporation when I joined in 2013. And I was part of many of these solar parks, and I'm just very excited to see so many solar parks are coming up. And like the Badla, which has become one of the largest solar park across the world. And you have a Pavagada solar park in Karnataka, which is also close to more than 2,000 megawatt. So I think the journey is exciting, and the beauty of, first of all, solar is you can start from a very small in kilowatt size to terawatt size, which we are talking about. It's the beauty of this this energy, and which is free, and which we are in the very, very exciting area of the earth, where we have so much of more than 330 days of sunny days we have. So we are poised to become kind of the big driver in the entire solar. And the International Solar Alliance, precisely, which you talked about, more than it's 100 countries have become members. In fact, it has joined 119 countries have joined this organization, and there are more and more countries are joining. And the very idea also is to take these learnings and journey and the competence which we developed in India. Those stories can also go to the other countries, especially the countries in the Africa or in Latin American region or in the other Asian regions, where in Africa, the installed capacity is in the range of 14 gigawatt in an entire continent, where we as a country, we have crossed 84 gigawatt. Many of these learnings, so the global south will be highly benefited from the learnings and the models, the financial models and the business model, and more of the private sector participation. I think these are the big stories. What we did it in India can also percolate or to transfer to other countries. So let me close at this
Right.
point of time.
And so one more question. How much of a credit would you also like to give to the government? Because, they have maintained stable policies, they have worked on supply chains, and the continued government support has also aided, in these numbers going up. Do you think that is also one of the important key factors why we are seeing this boom?
So, in fact, I would say the most important part of the entire journey, I would say the maximum credit goes to the government of India and the other states as well. The government realized that creating an ecosystem, it will attract the investments. So in terms of easing the business rules, easing the transmission connectivity rules, easing the other policies, all these policies, and also creating the innovative practices like solar parks, I think government has played a very, very important role, and they have created the ecosystem which has made the private people or the private sector or the investment very attractive to the investment community. And the whole growth story, I would give, this is happened because of the government's initial initiatives. Rather than as a regulator, it has become a kind of facilitator role that has created the entire ecosystem. So that's my take on the entire story.
All right, appreciate that. Ankit, if you're there with us, I hope you can hear me. Mr. Ankit Bhugra?
Yeah, I am there.
Right. Well, India's solar energy boom is obviously going places. This precedent which India is setting for the world is obviously indicative of the growing stature that India holds when it comes to maintaining and developing and basically fostering this technology. But there is still a time when massive adoption of solar energy is percolated into households. How far are we from that?
The Indian government is basically, they are playing this solar cricket match in a very, very big way. Okay, and they are hitting the sixes in this solar cricket match. Like if we talk about Bhadla solar power plant, it is near about 2.2 megawatt. And what Indian government have announced for the solar household sector, they have announced 1 crores of connection, and we take it for 3 kilowatt, it comes to be 3 gigawatt. So an household itself will become a largest solar power plant park throughout the world. And for the implementation, if I talk about, India is doing the implementation in a very good way, which also keeps the example for the throughout the world, that in a so much of basically segregated household sector, how we are creating this 1 crore household to be cater with the solar power projects. And for the current scenario, we are on the urge of completing. We have received more than 1 crore of applications to install solar powers, and it is also give a very big boost to the Indian manufacturing sector of solar modules. Currently, if we talk about how the government is facilitating the PLI scheme in the manufacturing sector, with the 48 gigawatt of manufacturing that to be come up in next 3 years, with an allocation of with more than 19,000 crores in the PLI scheme. And what about we talk about the technology in the solar module manufacturing? India is adopting the world's best technologies in solar module manufacturing. Now we have become the exporters of the solar modules instead of the importers of the solar modules. We are exporting to Africa, we are exporting to America, we are taking over with the world's best technologies, with taking over some of the world's best companies here. So solar industry is going on a very big way, and there is it's basically a starting a roadmap currently in India, and there is a very big long way to go ahead, and we are on the right path on that.
Ms. Abhishek Pillai, I beg your pardon, co-founder of Solar Ladder, is also with us on the program. Abhishek Pillai, how do you look at this, this change of not only India's stature as one of the most important and prominent countries to work upon solar energy, but the numbers that we are seeing in the last quarter alone go on to tell you that this ascendance of India in this realm is not only unfettered, but it's also going to become an example, like Mr. Ramesh and Ankit also went on to say, for the global south, which can definitely use cheaper sources of energy and power.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. As you mentioned, India has set a very ambitious target. The broad target that we have is that by 2070, we want to be net zero emission. And to achieve this, we have set up very significant and very ambitious solar goals. And to the credit of the government, they have come up with very good. So we have the PLI scheme that has already been mentioned. We have the Suryoday Yojana, which is actually giving subsidies to the residential households. And like Mr. Ankit mentioned, 1 crore households going solar, around 3 kilowatt per household. That's 30 gigawatt. But what's more astonishing is that there's actually 25 crore households that have the potential to actually go solar. And what happens by setting these ambitious target and helping set this infrastructure is that the private players, someone like Solar Ladder and all the financial and financial companies, NBFCs, banks, can also participate in it. So within the last, I would say 6 to 8 months, the number of banks and NBFCs who have come up with solar loans to actually help residential customers go solar by reducing the upfront burden of going solar and giving solar loans. Then there are the number of installers who are entering in the sector and reducing the cost of installations. These things actually help create a very, very productive and efficient ecosystem. Once the ecosystem is set up, then we can easily achieve these targets. In 2022, we did miss the target of the 40 gigawatt of solar. But I'm very confident that with the push that the government has given, the participations from the private sector, we can easily achieve these targets.
All right. Abhishek Mazumdar, Head of Embassy Services Private Limited, also with us on the program. Mr. Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Industry and Commerce, also joins us on the show. Mr. Dua, how do you see this playing out for India? In terms of, of course, the numbers is one thing to celebrate, sir, but the fact of the matter is India's autonomy and independence when it comes to its energy needs is something of, a complicated sitting on the fence kind of a situation. Is that something that you see being resolved in the next few years, perhaps even by 2030, as the government sees and pushes for this vertical to grow?
Thank you for having me on the show. Substitution of fossil fuels by renewable energy is largely directed at two goals. Number one, from the climate change point of view, moving to a cleaner fuel. And second, for us, it becomes important because it will take us away from the import dependence, the huge import dependence which we have on particularly the hydrocarbon fuels. Coal partially, but hydrocarbon in a major manner. So I do think that emphasizing renewable energy and in which solar power now is the predominant constituent. No, it's no longer wind, what used to be there for the first 2 decades, ever since we started talking about renewable energy. Now it is solar and solar all the way, I would say. But while we are doing that, I'd like to just add a couple of words of, I wouldn't call it caution, but a degree of realism in what's being discussed here. Number one, renewable energy does need, because of its very character, that it is generated with interruptions. At night, you don't have solar power. When the wind factor is low, you don't have the windmills working, etc. So we have to address the issue of meeting the requirement. And whereas the consumption is 24 hours a day, there may be peaks, ups and downs in that, but the consumption is there all along. So that is where our addressing the issue not merely of generation, but storage, large scale. The more solar we produce, the greater is the requirement for the storage batteries and large size ones. Along with that, we also have to address the issue of the transmission network. So when we talk about the cost of a particular mode of renewable energy, we have to add to those, because of their peculiar nature, what's the cost and what's the time period involved in installing the batteries and revamping network. But that now it's become virtually an integral part. Everybody accepts that fact that the electricity has to be not merely generated, whether it's solar or wind or any other manner, but also it has to be reached to the customer, and in that storage batteries and this one, the transmission board becomes an integral part. And the issues, the challenges with respect to those have to be addressed at the same intensity as in the generation. Second, I think while we are heading way ahead of many other countries of the world in setting up new installed capacity, including Bhadla and other places which were mentioned earlier by the esteemed panelists here, I think we need to also worry about the fact that some of the ingredients for making the solar panels, the solar systems, those continue to be imported into the country. The very raw material, basic raw material, which itself is required to produce the solar cells, it starts from there, and then the solar cells have to be in turn assembled into the solar panels and then the installation job. So I think to get to the stage of making the solar cells in a big manner, beginning has been made. PLI is even talking about addressing that requirement. But that is something put with so-called self-sufficiency to develop in this entire ecosystem, that will need to be addressed.
Right, sir. So there seems to be an issue with your audio. Let me quickly rope in Abhishek Majumdar also into this conversation. Abhishek, are you there with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, Abhishek, of course, the reason why this endeavor and this push by the government is also beneficial because of, reduced solar power rates, and the internal rate of return also on these projects has also improved. And this is obviously because of the mass appeal and mass consumption. But the fact is, from an industrial to a residential usage, how much of a time passage would you foresee so that this feat that we're discussing today is even a bigger one, say perhaps in a couple of years?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. See, there are 2 points. First is the large scale uses for the industrial and commercial consumers. So for that, government is doing and very, very well by planning their ISTS programs and all. The viability gap funding is there. There are PO trajectories there for 29 and 30. So these things are there for the larger scale. For the smaller, as Mr. Abhishek also mentioned, this PM announcement to reach 1 crore household with the decentralized solar capacity of 3 kilowatt each. So that kind of things should go parallelly if we are going to achieve our target by 2040, giving the importance to carbon intensity to reduce it by 40%, right? And this will help, as Mr. Dua also suggested, that there should be some demand and supply congestion management has to be there. So the moment people start installing solar on their roof, this will help to minimize the load on the demand side and can help the congestion management by the state load dispatch centers as well. So for that also the government policies is there, and state, if you see like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and some part of Madhya Pradesh are doing very well in this regard. And third is like, where we are moving towards the carbon intensity, reducing carbon intensity. And also I just would like to mention one value, like the last report of CA, it says that where the grid emission was there around 800 grams per unit of electricity, now it's been reduced by 700. With these installations and fusing the green power to the grid, we somehow are reducing the carbon intensity of the electricity generated to the grid. And yeah, government is eventually moving, like if you see the graph earlier, we were distributed among four national grid, now synced to the two national grid, Muni and the Southern, and post 2013 it's only single grid. So with the introduction of this policy of interstate transmission scheme, it's not like you have to generate the power in the same state. You'll be generating like Badla, if you see, most of the power is going to the UP, right? So this kind of transmission systems waiver and the government policy also helping on the larger scale and to the distributed sector as well.
Right, absolutely. And Mr. Ramesh Gurupat, coming back to you, sir. So when it comes to India's achievements or India's vision, or rather India's ambition in terms of its carbon emissions, how important is for everyone, including the government, who seems to be doing their part very meaningfully, how important is it for all of us to realize that solar power is the way forward?
Thank you for that question. So I think taking some of the points what we discussed, we have set a net zero target by 2070. So I think we started our journey towards that, and we are already doing it, and we will be accelerating it. One of the facts we need to realize, India, we have, as far as the energy resources are concerned, we have very limited resources in terms of the natural resource available, or I would say one of the important resource available is coal in India. So to such a large country with 114 billion people, when you talk about shifting from such a large the source-based power, that's coal-based power generation, it's a Herculean task. So that's what we need to understand in the first instance. I've come from, before my Solar Energy Corporation or before ISA, I was also a very long time with NTPC Limited, one of the biggest producer of power in India. So the issue is we are having the issue of the resources availability in the country, and the entire petroleum, more than 80% we are to import. So the journey which the solar will substitute, gradually we keep on reducing the coal generation. And that if you can look at the statistics, every year we are systematically reducing the dependence on the generation from the coal based power stations. And the other part, if you look at, we are also having a lot of hydro potential, but hydro potentials are, again, there are the challenges, the seasonal challenges, and also you would have also come across some of the issues in the Himalayan belt in terms of the geology. So these things also there is a constraint. wind always have it's more specific to the where the location based, where you have a very high wind velocity and all these things. So we have, so in terms of, we look at the solar will be the very driving force in our journey for reducing the carbon emission, and in eventually leading to the net zero ambition. So we have the when we started in 2013 on the phase 2 of Jawaharlal Nehru solar mission, that was the time we were looking for more and more, the land will be one of the very key ingredient, or one of the key issues which need to address. And when we look at it, there is a vast area of land available in the Rajasthan, and but the issue at that point of time was the connectivity issues. In terms of the interstate transmission system was much lesser towards the Rajasthan. So government took a very proactive action in terms of, I would say, the green energy corridor, which is connecting all the wind resources and also the solar potential across the country. That has really paying the benefit in terms of whatever you saw, the Badla and much more, many more solar parks being created in Rajasthan and in Gujarat, and more. I would also talk about the Kavda, where there is a 30,000 megawatt plan, which is already in phases. It is starting. This will, I would say, change the entire the story of solar in the coming years. I think so. Considering all these things, this will play a very important role. We are already working on in terms of the transmission, connecting all the solar rich areas and where the land is available. I think this will systematically give you a room for reducing or the dependence on the coal-based power station, coal-based power generation. I think these are the key things I would like to put forward at this point of time. Thank you.
Mr. Dua, your thoughts on India's ambitions of a net zero future, and considering how we have our own challenges when it comes to carbon emissions and pollution, do you think this is a possibility that can be in fact mitigated with the thriving results we have seen in solar allocation and energy?
Certainly, I think the contribution of solar power to reducing carbon intensity is going to be huge. So that's where all the emphasis which we give to solar power, I would say much more can also be done, because there are benefits of shifting from conventional power sources to solar power is huge and growing in nature. As the demand increases, as more distribution of population takes place, etc., we would need to continue to emphasize all aspects of solar power, be it the importance and intensity, be it more land to be made available, be it more transmission lines, storage, huge amount of R&D work which it has to go on into this kind of a thing, so as to make solar power cheaper, solar power more in aggregate, going what was just mentioned, that if 60% of our power is still thermal, and the generation capacity is probably more, but we have to substitute most of it because it is coming from burning either coal or the hydrocarbons. We need to, I think, continue to emphasize this more and more. On that, I have very little doubt. The questions are, some of them are related to the fact that all over the country, you cannot have solar power because what's called the solar intensity. The solar intensity, it also depends upon various factors, including the cloud's positioning, etc. We can't develop all the areas of the country for to be equally efficient in generating solar power. So there would be certain parts of the country, certain states, which are more favorable for production of solar power, and there need or need not be consumption there. For instance, Rajasthan. So the transmission aspect, making that more, modernizing that, making that more efficient would have to come along with it. And in doing so, I think the state can be a facilitator, but state cannot be a producer or the carrier of power to the extent which we are envisaging. That is where I think the ecosystem for involving the more and more private
All right,
players.
sir. So we have
Small,
unfortunately run
medium,
out of
large.
time, but I would also take this opportunity to thank all our guests who in fact came to the show, spoke their mind off on this important achievement.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.